Welcome. My name is Katrina Horn. I'm a life coach, TEDx speaker, and a self-love activist. And today we're diving in to how you can use self-love to say goodbye to stress and overwhelm.
What we'll be covering here is a hands-on practical exercise, which is something I love to fit in all your obligations into your schedule. That is a very practical thing to do, and I think it's so useful. Then we'll be doing a mind experiment that I hope will change your relationship with time and get you out of this "there's never enough time" energy. And then we'll be bringing on the self-love. It's how to dial in the emotions you want to be feeling so that you can get the experience out of whatever it is you choose to be doing, the one you want. So it's a lot about conscious choice. It's about mindful living. And if you want to get anything out of this training, you will have to slip out of victim mode. If we are in that victim mode, we are expecting other people to make us happy. We're saying, it's your fault. We're saying things like, it's not fair, this shouldn't be happening to me. And we don't feel we've got a choice. Often it's very comforting to say, this is my parents' fault, this is my friends, my employer, my friends, whatever, teacher, society's fault, right? So you're not taking responsibility. It's also convenient to say, I don't have any power and I can't. I can't. Think about it. It's not possible. And there's not enough money, time, or energy. This is what I associate with this victim mode, which is somewhere we've all been, and it's okay to be there. But for this training to be useful for you, you can't stay in this mode. You have to step out of it, right? This is something I can help you with, obviously, but just think about it. Where I want you to be is taking responsibility. So I make myself happy. I am responsible, and that doesn't mean that you can control everything. You can't control if you get ill. You can't control if your cat gets run over, right? There are lots of things, I mean, most things in life we can't control, right? But what we can do is choose how we want to react to it. That is where the responsibility comes in. It's not with the events, it's with our reaction to the events. That is why I say things only affect me if I allow them to. So things can be happening in my life. My boss can be yelling at me. My mum can be saying, oh, Katrina, that dress doesn't really suit you, or whatever, but I can still choose how I want to react to it. So that is taking responsibility of your part in it. Obviously, you can't stop your boss yelling at you, and you can't stop your mum thinking that you've got dreadful taste. That is their problem, right? You can only choose how you want to react to it. So tell yourself that your parents, friends, teachers, society, whoever you get in touch with, have got their journey, and their reactions are their responsibility, and their reactions say more about them than it says about you. So if your boss is yelling at you, it might have nothing to do with you. Think about it. You don't know what happened in his or her life, do you? Often when people get angry, start yelling, it's something entirely different. But this is not the session where I want to go into that. We're going to talk about stress and overwhelm and how we can use self-love to get over all that. Think of it. I am the source of power. You are powerful. You don't have to rely on other people. it's lovely to be connected to other people, right? But we don't need them. We don't need them to come and fix anything for us, because we are able to do so ourselves. You can, I can, we all can. Maybe not right now, maybe not alone, maybe not a lot of things, but just keep in mind that we all can. And you can learn how to honor your valuable resources. And that is really what we're going into in this session about time and how you choose to use it. The recipe for stress is not really the amount of things that we've got going on. Think about, what can I call them, a CEO of a multinational company. I mean, they must have so many things going on at once, right? But some of them are not at all stressed out. I mean, think of Steve Jobs or people like that. They're just totally cool, right? So it's not actually the amount of activity that stresses us out. It's something different. It's our attitude to it. And it's also about wanting to do more than we actually can. So it's cramming stuff into that scheduler and not making it fit in. So not getting to do the stuff we want to do, that is where the stress comes in. So I made a little equation with this, which is of course just a thought, right? It's not mathematical. I wanted to set it up even more mathematically. And I was discussing this with my husband, who's a computer programmer. But I thought, oh, let's not go there, because I think this would put people off, really. What you have to understand is that there are ingredients in this stress recipe. There's expectation. There's your expectations towards yourself and towards the outcome. There could be other people's, like your bosses, your parents, your partners, your children's. So there's a lot of expectations going around here. There's the action itself. There's a time you allow for it. And then there's the emotional response. And that can result, or that will give a result, right? So that means there are actually a lot of ways we can influence it. If you see there are 5 entry points into stress. What I'll be talking about in this presentation is proving versus allowing. So for a long time, I thought that, right, I had to have a lot of things to do. Otherwise, my life would be really boring. I mean, I used to think, oh, I've got nothing to do this Sunday. I must ring up a lot of friends and fill that Sunday out. So I won't what? Right? And if we're being really honest with ourselves, looking at a blank page in our diary can be a little bit worrying, because we're thinking, am I getting this right? Am I missing out on something? Am I really living my life to the full? If I've got all this empty space going on, what does that say of me? And what I wanted to say about that is, this is a thought that comes from lack. It's not a thought that comes from plenty. Here are the questions I would like for you to ask. What are you expecting to achieve? Remember, the ingredients I just said were in the stress recipe. What are the activities you want in your life? How much time are you willing to spend on them? How do you want to feel while you're doing them? How do you want to feel after you're doing them? How do you want to feel afterwards? So, going into all that deliciousness, I would like for us to do an exercise together. And it would be so helpful if you had a little piece of paper, even a big piece of paper, even several pieces of paper. What I'd like for you to do is to have 3 three pieces of paper or three sections on one piece of paper. And there'll be one section that you will call must. And there's one section you will call want. And a third section that you would want to call perhaps. And what we're going to do here is a brain dump. So instead of keeping all these things in our minds, we'll get them down on paper. So that will free up space in our minds because we'll have it all down. So that means, oh, I can let go of that. I've got it down. So just take a little bit of time. If you're watching the replay, just press pause, right? And dive into what is it that I must do? So these are the obligations. These are the things that you must do. Could be getting that report ready. Could be buy food for my family. I mean, things that you must do. You can't just think, okay, I might get around to doing them. So your musts, anything you must do, write it all down. Could be little things, could be big things. Getting a present for Aunt Berta, getting more dog food for my dog or whatever, anything that comes to mind. That is really essential for your life to be able to unfold the way you want it. And once you've got all that off your plate, you can think into what is it that you want to do. Any wants? Would you want to go to the cinema? Would you want to start finding out about applying for a new job? Do you want to plan your holidays? Do you want to redecorate your home? Think into everything that you can think of that you really want to do, so that you've got the musts and the wants. And then we've got the third department, or the third piece of paper, which is perhaps. So these perhaps could be anything that is a possibility. Like I've been talking this week about organizing a retreat. So that has been a possibility for me on my perhaps list, but I've been moving it into my want list. So that is where it gets to be even more delicious, but just keeping with the perhaps. Oh, I want perhaps to organize a delicious retreat for self-loving women in the south of France. So it's on my perhaps list. It's moved to my want list, but just go with the perhaps for a while. What is it that you might want to experience in your life? Is it to go scuba diving? Is it to start your own business? Do you want to move? Find love? What is it that you might want? Perhaps. So if you've been doing this exercise, you've now got 3 departments or lists or columns, right? 3 pieces of paper. Now, I'm challenging you to take one thing off your must list. Is there anything that could go? Think about it. I know it's enormous. I mean, we think we're indispensable. We think that there are things we have to do. And the truth is, there's nothing we have to do. We could just lie down and die. Nobody's indispensable. So if you want to really look at the truth, just admit that there's actually nothing we must do. Knowing that, I'm inviting you to take one thing off that must list. One thing. Could be, I'm no longer willing to do the food shopping. I'm not going to get Aunt Berta a birthday present. I would find a different solution, right? I'm no longer going to do the cleaning or whatever. And lots of these things you can actually delegate. So unless it really is something to do with you as a person, like you finishing that project, or you going to that party, or you going to that job interview. Think about what could you delegate? And there's lots of things to delegate. And what people sometimes tell me is, oh, I haven't got the money. Well, if you haven't got the money, have you got something else that you might be able to trade? Maybe you could look after somebody's children in exchange for somebody mowing your lawn. Think of it. What is it possible to do? Be a little bit creative. What is it that you would like to take off your must list and totally get rid of? Not to think about anymore. You've delegated that bit. Right? Often if you're in a couple, you can delegate stuff to your partner, and I think most of us here are women. So we could just ask our partners to do a lot of the stuff that we take on, right? Because we want to feel indispensable. We think we are the only ones who can do the cleaning the way it must be done, right? If we're being totally honest, we think our way of doing things is the best way of doing things. But if we're willing to tolerate just a little bit on the part of our family, parents, partners, caretakers, well, maybe we could just open up to a lot of delegation here, right? So think about what could you take off your list? And then let's dive into the want list. What is it that you want to do? It might not be what you must do, although I am getting back to that. What is it that is on your want list? Maybe you want to review that or prioritize it. What would really bring you the most joy, satisfaction, or happiness? Try and put a little bit of order in it, so it's not just all overwhelmingly what you want. Try and put a little bit of a priority on that. And then the perhaps. See what you're really keen on. What is it that you really want to perhaps pursue, right? So you've got these three lists or these three departments. Now the real challenge perhaps is I want you to fit all of it into your diary, into your scheduler. And you might want to fit it in over 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever it takes, but fit it in. If you can't fit it in, it means you won't be doing it. If you won't be doing it, no need beating yourself up about it. So fit everything into your scheduler. And what I prefer is that we mix up the musts with the wants, with the perhaps. So it doesn't get to be 3 months of obligations, and then 3 months of wants, and then 3 months of perhaps. Try and mix it all up so that there's some things that you must do that you do get done, but then you mix it deliciously with what you want to do, job-wise or in your personal life. So you get a mixture of pleasure and obligation. So we don't get into that mode where we are obliging ourselves all the time, depriving ourselves of the joy of doing the things we want to do. So mix it up. And my advice for you is to leave a little space around everything. Now, what happened to me before was that I'd be carrying around my diary, and when people would ask me to do something, I'd just flip out my diary and say, okay, I'll do that then. And so I ended up with that full diary that I don't really enjoy anymore. So not to fall into that trap, I don't carry around my scheduler or diary with me anymore. In fact, when people ask me, Katrina, could you do this, please? I say, I don't know. I just have to check in with my diary and then get back to you. Is it soon enough if I tell you tomorrow? And now what's the trick here? It is, you're not saying no up front, right? You're leaving the possibility for the person who's asking you. So you're giving yourself time, because we might be inspired to say yes straight away. Like if somebody says to you, do you want to come to the cinema tonight? Or could you please help me out? I'm in a dreadful muddle here. I need you to do this. We feel like saying yes, right? But if we're just left with a few hours of reflection, if we gift ourselves those moments to consider, often what we find is that this won't fit in. I mean, we might want to go to the cinema, we might want to help, but the cost of that is too great. The cost of going to the cinema is too great. Now, how can that be? Well, it can be because if you are fitting in your wants, your pleasures into your musts, and you get into that hamster wheel where you're just going from one activity to the next, you're no longer enjoying any of it. So what happened to me when I was carrying around my scheduler, people would ask me, will you come and have dinner with us on Wednesday? And if there was an empty space in my diary, they would say, oh yeah, you're free, you can do that. And I would feel, well, I wouldn't be able to enjoy dinner with you because it would be squeezed in between all this. And I would feel rushed. I would feel pressurized. It wouldn't be a pleasure for me anymore. So this is a bit difficult to explain to people. So I just stopped carrying around my diary so people can't pressurize me into that. But even now I've become so good at it. I've become so good at thinking, is it really worth it? Will I get the pleasure out of it that I want to get out of it? And if not, I have to say no. So that's when I talk about self-love and self-care. It's not self-care to squeeze in a massage if it means you having to sit in traffic and get stressed out about being late for your appointment, right? That is not self-care. And it's not self-love if you fill your scheduler with both musts and wants, but when you jam them so tightly together that there's no breathing space between them, you won't be getting to feeling the pleasure. You have to separate it out to feel the pleasure. So that's a tip from me. Make 3 lists, fit everything into your scheduler. If something doesn't fit in, sit back, admit you won't be doing it. And if you can mix up the 3 different columns or ideas, the wants, the musts, and the perhaps, well, that really brings you a lot more pleasure and enjoyment in your daily life. So I would really recommend that you do mix it up. So if we go back to thinking about what your activities are, if you remember my recipe for stress, you also have to think about, what is it that I really want to do, right? What is it that I must do? What is it that I want to do? What is it that I perhaps want to include? So coming back to my questions I asked you earlier, what is it you want to achieve? And to me in life, I want to achieve happiness, love, connection, sharing, feeling. That is what I want to achieve. So you can always check in with your musts, your wants, and your perhaps. Is this really achieving for you what it is you want to achieve? Are these activities what will bring you what it is you want? And that can be really useful just to cross-check in on this. How much time are you willing to spend on it? And that will become obvious when you fit it into your scheduler. When you fit it into your scheduler, Well, you have to leave time for it. Don't just make a list, schedule it in. Let's take an example. Let's say you want to write a job application for a new job. You don't really feel like doing it, but you feel it's a must. If you don't do it, you will stay in your old job and you're really quite keen to change. So it's a must. You schedule it in. Let's say you want to you spend 2 hours on it. Well, you schedule in 2 hours and perhaps a half, 2.5 hours, knowing that you'll be spending 2 hours on writing your job applications. Well, once the 2 hours are over, then you stop. So your job application might be finished or it might not. It doesn't really matter. You have finished, right? You have used the time you allotted to that task. If you decide to clean on a Saturday, you allow yourself 1 hour to do so, well, then you must stop after that 1 hour. And if you have a little bit of white space after, well, then that's much more delicious because you get to sit down and enjoy the results, right? So let's go back to the things you don't finish. Like you might not have finished your job application. You might not have finished cleaning. You have to schedule it in for some time, for some other time, right? Reschedule it in. Because scheduling everything in, I used to think, wow, what a dreadful thought, because my core value, my top value is freedom. How can I be free when I have to stick to that schedule? It doesn't feel like fun at all. So actually, when you schedule everything in, you don't have to think about it anymore. So you're really free in your mind. You're not stressed out because everything is planned out. And a schedule is there to follow, except when you choose not to. So imagine your sister's flying in from Greece. You want to spend time with her. Well, you have to rearrange your schedule, don't you? If your cat gets ill, you have to rearrange your schedule. So instead of being a freedom robber, this schedule, it's actually freedom provider, because everything is in there. You're leaving white space around your activities. That space you're using to just enjoying the results of everything you've been doing. So it's really liberating. You've liberated your mind, you've liberated lots of time, and you're on track, because if you're gifting yourself 2 hours to do a job application, well, after the 2 hours, then you feel good. I did that, right? I wasn't checking Facebook. I wasn't standing in front of the fridge wondering what I could eat. I wasn't doing this, I wasn't doing that. I was actually doing it. So when you do sit back, you've got a little bit of white space, let's say half an hour. Well, what do you get to do? Well, you get to do whatever you want to do, right? Till the next activity. Just try it out, but you really have to be firm with yourself. Try and estimate how much time you want to spend on it, and then be firm with yourself. Use a little self-loving discipline. If you don't manage to finish the task on time, schedule in whatever time you need afterwards. Go through it. When you get to that time, you'll be happy you already started that task, right? Because some tasks seem to be so enormous that we just can't see how we could possibly do them. Like writing a job application, for me, that is something, I mean, I've never done it, but I help people do it actually, and I find that to be a really daunting task for most people. So you don't want for it to just be hanging over you like a dark cloud. You want to actually be tackling it. Also, if you can't devote 2 hours to it, maybe you can just do it by little increments. 10 minutes, right? Thursday morning, I've got 10 minutes. I'll start my job application, which you will then do. So you start it, but of course you don't finish it, but you've started it. So you keep putting in little increments where you get back to it. And then you do a little bit more. And then you get back to it and you do a little bit more. That way, it doesn't feel daunting at all. What I also enjoy, and this you can use for many, many projects, is to solicit help. I talked about delegating, but what is sometimes much more fun is enlisting help. So you could be saying to your friends, look, I've got to write this job application. Would you have time on Saturday afternoon to come round and help me out? I'll cook you dinner, right? So you're getting people to help you. You're cooking them dinner, so you're spending time cooking dinner, but it's all in a joyful state, right? It's not from this I have to do, I must. It is I choose to cook dinner for people so that they will come and help me. When they come and help me, I don't feel so alone, and I'm actually able to get it done. Do you see what I mean? So play around with it like that. I also said you want to ask yourself, how do you want to feel while you do it, and how do you feel? How do you want to feel once you've done it? And this is really the self-love bit here. Obviously, the self-love bit is not scheduling in too many activities in too short a time, but it's also focusing on the feelings. So writing your job application, how do you want it to feel? Do you want to feel it's inspired, efficient, perhaps, I don't know, anything really, efficient, happy, hopeful, whatever it is you want to feel, just feel into it. And what could be useful for you is to think about a time where you had that feeling. If there was a time where you felt, inspired, think back to that time and just try and access the feeling of being really inspired. And once you get hold of that feeling, try and maintain that feeling, try and nurture it and sustain the feeling of being inspired. And then sit down and write. Can you see how the whole experience and the result is influenced by the feeling with which you're doing it? If you're coming to the task with that must energy, well, you'll not be feeling the same, will you? If you come to the task with inspiration, the whole process is so much more enjoyable. Also, what do you want the result to be? You want a job application that really reflects your authentic self? Well, so much the better if you have been doing it feeling inspired, if you have been doing it with your friends, in a good mood, having fun with it. The job application won't be the same, will it? So think about what feelings are you bringing to your task. So I've got quite a lot of information for you here just in that. There will be a replay, so you can go over the exercise again and see how you want to do it, how you can best fit it into how you function. Then I want to talk to you about a mind experiment. And the mind experiment is, what if you were the source of time? What if you didn't have to ask time for permission? Imagine yourself as just a source of time flowing out of you. You can decide where you want to direct it. Everything is possible. So if you think of time like that, you feel that actually I can choose where it is I want to devote my time. And what is sometimes useful is to think about time is money, but not in the traditional way. If you think of time as money, I'm sure that your money, you're not spending it in any old way. You're not just throwing it out there, hoping to, just to spend, right? With money, we're very conscious of what we want to get from it, aren't we? We don't just go and spend a lot of money on a lot of things because, well, might not be what we want. So if you think of time as time units, if you think of your energy as attention units or energy units, where do you want to spend them? Where do you want to put your time and energy units? Feel into that. You have got a conscious choice, and your conscious choice is what I talked about in the beginning when I was talking a bit about being in victim mode or being responsible. Of course, you are not responsible for what you are asked to do by your employer, right? You are responsible for how you want to react to it. You're not responsible for everything that happens to you in your life, but you are responsible for where you want to direct your attention. And if I can just get back to this analogy with time and money, some people have got a tendency to spend a little bit of money, a little bit everywhere on things they don't really need, they don't really want, but it's sort of fun to spend the money. And then other people, they want to save up and spend the money on exactly the thing they want, right? Two different ways of being. Now, which one are you with your time? Are you spending time everywhere? Or are you focusing your time on those valuable bits that you have chosen? Because as I often say, it's so easy to concentrate on what's urgent and never get to what is important, isn't it? But it really is up to us. We really can choose where it is we want to spend our time. So coming back to the boss, or coming back to your children, or coming back to people who are expecting something of you, you might have to educate them a little bit, right? You have to perhaps start teaching them that you can say no with grace and ease, and particularly without the guilt. Nobody can really demand anything of you because, as we saw in the beginning, you're not responsible for their happiness. You're not responsible for your employer's business, right? You are part of things, and as such, you take on the responsibility that you feel you are able to take on. So I think what prevents many of us from saying no is that we want to prove something. I mean, we want to prove that we are reliable, that we are efficient, that we can get things done. And sometimes we just want to prove that we are nice. What if you let go of that need to prove? What if you just dove into the feeling that you are such an asset to your employer, whether you get that done on time or not? What if you are such a delicious and loving mother, even if you don't get the house clean on time? What if you didn't have to prove anything to all these people, but most importantly to yourself? What if you let go of that identity of being super conscientious, responsible, and efficient? I mean, I know it's huge because some years ago, it would have been totally impossible for me to say, I'm sorry, I won't be able to do that. I've come a long way, right? So I sometimes let people down. I let people down to stay me. I have to, if I overcommit, well, I have to retrench. I have to say, I know I promised you to help you with this, but I'm afraid I just won't be able to. I'm so sorry. Please tell me how I can make this up to you. Please tell me how I can help you out with something else, right? And when you leave yourself that option, your blood pressure just goes down by I don't know how much, right? So please approach all your to-dos, your musts, with that attitude of, I've got a choice. I can choose to do it. I can choose not to do it. If we're really, really honest, the world will still be here if we don't do something. Our employer will still be in business. Our parents will still love us. Our children will still love us. Our dog won't die. There's always a solution. And it's not worth sacrificing your own well-being just to live up to a label of being reliable or efficient, right? Do you see what I mean? So take the pressure off yourselves. Really feel into how worthy of love you are without proving anything. You don't have to. It's all yours. You get to enjoy it and you get to choose. So people often say to me, but I mean, I've always done everything people have asked of me. How can I just not do it? I mean, people just won't have it, will they? Well, they will have it or not. But what you can do is to educate them a little bit about it. So instead of saying, I won't be doing the shopping anymore to your husband, you can negotiate it. And by negotiating, I don't mean that you're willing to give up, right? You are finding an alternative solution. And it does mean letting go of the label you've been giving yourself and maybe let other people give you of being the food shopper in your family, the cook, the cleaner, or your boss's person who remembers everything, or the boss's savior, or it means letting go of all that and diving into what feels authentic to you. And I'm talking about food shopping and cooking because actually that is something I have let go of with my husband. We don't have any children, but I have got a husband who didn't used to cook. And actually he did, I mean, in his own fashion, but to him a meal would be boiled rice with perhaps a carrot. But to me, that wasn't a meal. That was not something I wanted to enjoy. But I had to let go of that, didn't I? Because I didn't want to be the sole person responsible for feeding us. So I had to negotiate my way into this. So it started off with saying, could you please cook on Thursday? And he would say yes, and then he would forget. So obviously I couldn't control that, but I could control my reaction to it. So when Thursday came around, there was nothing to eat. We could just say, wow, there's nothing to eat. What shall we do now? So that would come, we would come up with tons of other different solutions, like going out or not having dinner or having what was at the bottom of the fridge or whatever, ringing up friends and saying, we're coming around, or lots of alternative solutions. Okay, so this is a learning process. So when we got over that first step, well, then my husband would perhaps have made something to eat, which was not really what I would call a balanced meal, but there would be food, right? So that was the next step. So after that step, we've actually got to the step where he can make a real meal. And to me, a real meal is protein with vegetables and perhaps some starch, right? So that would be several things in one meal. And actually, he's getting to feel really empowered because I enjoy those meals. And I always tell him, wow, amazing. This tastes so good, right? So it has been a process I wasn't expecting him to come up with a 4-course meal the first time, right? Actually, I didn't have any expectations. I was just open to see what would happen. And over time, I have allowed this to happen, right? I could have told him, you must have dinner ready for me on Thursday. But would that have changed anything? No, it wouldn't. I would have set up my expectations for a dinner which I wouldn't have had. Do you see what I mean? So I would have felt frustrated, which is not a feeling I want to entertain. So you can play around with all these elements in the stress recipe, as long as you don't expect something that causes a lot of strife and struggle. Well, then you're really good. So think about, you can adjust the activity. Instead of doing your whole job application, you could do part of it. You can adjust your expectations for the outcome. At the end of 10 minutes, I will just have found the layout, perhaps. Or after 2 hours, I will have done half of it. So you adjust your expectations and the activity. You can dial in the emotion you want to be feeling while you're doing it. I want to feel inspired. At the end, I want to feel gratified or whatever. You can dial in those emotions. You can allot a certain time to the task, but once you've done that, you must stick to it, right? Don't think, oh, I could just go over time a little bit to get it all wrapped up. Don't. Leave it as it is, right? And schedule in more time if you have to. So there are lots of different ingredients in the stress formula or in the stress recipe. You have got so much influence on that, right? As soon as you start choosing consciously how you want to participate in it, you get the power and you get the choice.
So what I would like for you to consider now is to take this further, is to implement what we've been talking about during this training. And if you so wish, take it further. I've got a stress detox course that you can sign up for. It is available right now. It's an inner game reset course for peace of mind, increased joy, and emotional freedom from stress. If you want to work on your self-image so that you can set yourself up for success instead of for stress, if you want to build solid but graceful boundaries and start developing some self-care rituals that will ensure that you take care of yourself, and that includes better sleep, why don't you just consider popping over to Stress Detox and check out what is on offer there. You can find it with the link that you got for this video, or you can go to katrinahorncoaching.lpages.co/stress-detox. And I'll just repeat that. katrinahorncoaching.lpages.co/stress-detox. Move this into your must list. Take it out of your perhaps list. Please do take care of yourself. And finally, resolve to get the results that you have been craving. I enjoyed talking to you. Hope to see you in Stress Detox.